What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into the FantasyPros YouTube channel. My name is Lucas Wencl, and today we're talking about 10 players that you should be looking to stash ahead of the Week 5 slate and ahead of next week's waivers as well. Before we dive on into that list of players, though, you can take the guesswork out of waiver wire decisions with FantasyPros Waiver Assistant. It will give you instant analysis on potential moves from over 100 fantasy experts. You'll also discover both the weekly and rest of season impact for every waiver ad. All you have to do is visit fantasypros.com/myplaybook or download the Fantasy Football My Playbook app. Again, all you got to do, visit fantasypros.com/myplaybook or download the Fantasy Football My Playbook app to optimize your roster today. Kicking off our list this week is Indianapolis Colts wide receiver Josh Downs, who's rostered in 34% of leagues. This number is typically higher than I like for stash videos, but we just saw Downs have his second best fantasy day of his career on Sunday. He caught 8 of 9 targets for 82 yards and a score, good for the wide receiver, 8 on the week with 22.2 fantasy points. Now, I fully recognize the majority of his production came with Joe Flacco at quarterback and not Anthony Richardson. But if we want to dig deeper, Downs has now seen a target on 35.8% of his routes this year, which is an exceptionally good number. The ceiling isn't astronomically high with Downs, but in PPR formats, he's a necessary stash on your bench, fully knowing he could give you double-digit fantasy points against a struggling Jaguars secondary on Sunday. The second player on our list is Xavier Legette, wide receiver for the Carolina Panthers, who's rostered in 27% of leagues. Again, a little bit higher than I like for these videos, but after a career day in Legette's young career, this number should be much higher in my opinion. Legette only came off the field for 11 snaps on Sunday, and his 10 targets were second to only Deontay Johnson, who drew 13 in an explosive game with the Bengals. The Carolina Panthers offense appears to be substantially better with Andy Dalton under center, and with Adam Thielen on injured reserve, Legette is going to continue shining as the number 2 option in the receiving game. I get wanting to see if lightning strikes twice, but I don't think we need to, because by this point next week, Legette's roster percentage could be well above 50%. Our first running back stash this week is Tank Bigsby of the Jacksonville Jaguars, who's rostered in 21% of leagues. Backfield mate Travis Etienne is currently dealing with a shoulder injury, which I don't expect to make him unavailable for Week 5, but Tank Bigsby has proven he should be a priority stash. Bigsby is dealing with a shoulder injury of his own, but despite that, suited up in Week 4 and ripped off a 58-yard rush in the second half with Travis Etienne on the sideline. I recognize Bigsby went quiet in Week 3 after exiting early in Week 2, but Bigsby gets a phenomenal 4-game stretch, drawing the Colts, Bears, Patriots, and Packers, where if anything happens to Etienne, or Doug Peterson decides to give him more touches, Bigsby could take full advantage. The fourth player on our list is Las Vegas Raiders wide receiver Tre Tucker, who's rostered in 14% of leagues. You might not realize it, but Tucker has put up 15-plus fantasy points in each of the last 2 weeks, including 22.6 in Week 3 against the Panthers. Tucker was on the field for a season-high 85% of the team snaps and only ran 1 less route than Jacoby Myers, while running 4 more than Brock Bowers, who we honestly expected to take a step forward without Davante Adams. At this point, it appears we're headed for a divorce between Davante Adams and the Raiders, and it's truly unknown whether he plays another down or not for this franchise. With all that in mind, Tre Tucker becomes an instant stash candidate with opportunity that should continue to fall his way, even in tough matchups with Denver and Pittsburgh coming up. The second Trey on our list this week is running back Trey Sermon of the Indianapolis Colts, who's rostered in 30% of leagues. Jonathan Taylor's status for Week 4 is murky, to say the absolute least. Normally when we hear high ankle sprain, we automatically think multi-week absence. Apparently, Taylor only has a mild high ankle sprain. And I'm no doctor, so I'm not going to bother speculating, but after getting generationally gaslit by the 49ers this offseason with Christian McCaffrey, I would be taking 0 chances and stashing Trey Sermon wherever I can. Even if Taylor suits up on Sunday, there's always a possibility of re-aggravation if he's pushed back too quickly, and Sermon would suddenly find himself atop the team's depth chart if anything were to happen. Coming in next is Jordan Whittington, Los Angeles Rams wide receiver who's rostered in 6% of leagues. I know it's a headache deciding which Rams wide receiver will be the most fantasy relevant on a week-to-week basis right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if we start trending towards Jordan Whittington being the guy to target. Whittington participated in 100% of routes on Sunday, where he drew a 28% target share, catching 6 of 8 targets for 62 yards. He only came off the field for 2 snaps, and it seems like Sean McVay wants and frankly kind of needs him to be a full-time player. I completely recognize the Rams are on bye in Week 6, but according to Jay Glazer, Puka Nacua will be out for at least another month, and maybe we can expect to see Cooper Kupp in Week 7, but that's definitely up in the air. You can play the waiting game with Whittington on the waiver wire if you want, but if you truly want to stay ahead of your league mates, you would stash him now. Our tight end stash of the week is Erick All Jr. of the Cincinnati Bengals, who's rostered in 2% of leagues. If I were to open up the dictionary right now and turn to consistent, it would be a picture of Erick All's face. He's caught 4 passes on 4 targets in each of the last 3 weeks, but Week 4 was the first time we saw All see a spike in his snaps, leading all Bengals tight ends playing 40 of a possible 67. Mike Gesicki still ran 8 more routes than the rookie out of Iowa, but with how desolate the tight end landscape is right now, I'm willing to throw a dart on his upside in deep leagues. As the season progresses, we could see his role continue to blossom, and if you have the room at the end of your bench, I don't hate stashing Erick All whatsoever. Next up is Denver Broncos running back Audric Estime, who's rostered in 1% of leagues. Tyler Bidet made this list last week, but had to leave Sunday's contest after a scary back injury. There's been a handful of positive reports about his health, but still appears to be an injured reserve candidate, paving the way for Audric Estime to have a role in this Broncos backfield. Now, Audric Estime, he also finds himself on injured reserve right now, but was widely speculated to have a cutout role in this offense prior to his Week 1 injury. Again, this stash is only for players in the deepest of leagues who want to stay 2 to 3 steps ahead of their league mates, but once Estime comes back, he could be mixing in with Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin. Another deep league stash to consider is Justin Watson, wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs, who's rostered in 2% of leagues. I'm willing to throw a dart on one of these Kansas City wide receivers, and while it may amount to nothing, I would be kicking myself if I didn't at least test the water should someone outside of Travis Kelce and Xavier Worthy see an increased role. I'm rocking with Justin Watson as the guy to stash, and it's mostly looking at who was on the field after Rice exited Sunday's contest against the Chargers. Watson only played 2 less snaps than Xavier Worthy and ran only 4 less routes while drawing the same amount of targets. Should the Chiefs utilize more 2 tight end sets with Noah Gray, it will likely be Worthy and Watson on the perimeter. Again, this is really only for deep leagues if you need a spontaneous dart throw, and after all, we did see Mahomes throw for 5,200 yards with the Land of Misfit Toys in 2022. Last but not least, for all of you playing in leagues where you start a defense and special teams unit, you can look to stash the Los Angeles Chargers, who are on bye and rostered in only 21% of leagues. Somewhat quietly, the Chargers are a top 10 scoring defense in fantasy football this year and draw a juicy matchup with the Denver Broncos in Week 6. This defense has forced an interception in every game this year and hasn't given up more than 20 points to an opponent. So yeah, give me this Chargers defense against a Bo Nix offense in Week 6 that you can stash now since they're on bye. Alrighty, y'all, that is it. That is all I've got for you today. But before we sign off, remember, you can take the guesswork out of waiver wire decisions with FantasyPros Waiver Assistant. It will give you instant analysis on potential moves from over 100 fantasy experts. You'll also discover both the weekly and rest of season impact for every waiver ad. All you have to do, visit fantasypros.com/myplaybook or download the Fantasy Football My Playbook app. Again, all you have to do, visit fantasypros.com/myplaybook or download the Fantasy Football My Playbook app to optimize your roster today.